Good morning, everyone. It is a lovely morning here in the west of Ireland, and I'm going to take you on a little walk. Well, I'm going to go for a little walk myself, and you are invited to come along with me. I'm sorry, folks, I'm fully dressed. The gym jams are folded up and underneath my pillow. Yes, I'm keeping to a really good routine of getting up and showering, dressing, and getting right into the day. Because there's not that many hours in the day at the moment. But, just a few more days until midwinter. The solstice. So exciting. So I've got the camera on the stick and I'm going to hold it up and try to keep it steady, and if you don't hear my voice, sorry. So here we go. You can see the Leicester famosa here is still very green, and that's not unusual. And you can also see, I think you can see anyway, because I can't see what you're seeing on the camera. It's too high up. But there's some pampas grass come out over there. You see that? Oh, you get a bird's eye view of the Lunacy garden. And look at all the algae on top of the tunnel. It's going to need another wash. I think because it's been sort of quite warm and well, not warm, but quite mild, and quite a fair bit of rain. See how tidy my compost bins look. Just planting in that little bit of hedging over there, you can just see this sort of orangey looking hedging. That's just planted by putting slips into the ground, and that's spirea. So that provides a beautiful colour during the winter months. And it's strange really, because when I was planting, of course I'm continuing to plant here at Bealtaine Cottage, but I never really thought about colours. I think it was mostly just intuitive planting. So somewhere in my subconscious mind I was aware of the colours that would be coming up on a seasonal basis. I'm trying to remember to walk slowly and to not turn the camera too much. And I'll bring it down now and again. So the ferns down here have just started to colour back now into to sort of drop down. Beautiful colours there as well. And of course, as the winter progresses, the rebirth rowan tree becomes more and more silvery, more ethereal. And now I'm holding up the camera and I'm pointing it over towards Slieve and Erin. Can't really see much this morning because it's quite misty in the distance. So I'm going to just come down the little steps here. I'm sort of moving backwards. Just to give you more of a perspective. Oh, I've just seen a little nest down there made by a small creature. And you can also see here where you have part of an old stone. Well, it wasn't a stone wall. I don't know what kind of a stone thing it was, but you can just see the stone base there. There's a lot of little structures here at Bealtaine which seasonally make an appearance. They're not evident all the year round, but as the seasons change, you begin to see little sort of peeks into previous lives. And also, walking through the woodland at this time of the year as well, you can see so many little nesting places, little habitats. Because where the foliage begins to fall back and onto the earth, you can see what's behind. And then there's the transformation that's happening here in the fairy woods, because all these, see these little saplings? These are little ash trees. So you have all these little ash trees coming up. Now I suppose one might ask, why have these never grown before? Like, why isn't this all an ash wood? Because there are ash trees around that shed their seed around, but all the while that you have grazing animals on the land, you will not get trees coming up because they impede that natural spread of trees by nature. So now you have these little ash trees which, look, some of them are quite sturdy now. See, it's rising up above the thorn. And the same here, looking back, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're forming like a beautiful sort of corridor along here. And of course, the only place where they're not going to come up is where I'm walking down along here. But you see they're coming up on either side. So this is very natural regeneration happening, as nature wants it to happen. So having done most of the planting and the work and the co-creating with her, it's now it's now all fairly and squarely in her hands. And I'm the one who goes along and just, you know, snips this, snips that, just to keep paths open and to generally be there as an assistant, sometimes a midwife, but most times just a housekeeper. I am her housekeeper. What a wonderful role to have. So I'm going to just put the camera up so you can see the old fairy tree here, which is coming to the end of a cycle and rebirthing in much the same way as the rowan tree has. And you can just see, just pull the camera down and put my glasses on, there we go. So you can just see up there the little chair where I sit at the very sort of up along the precipice almost. Look at some of the beautiful moss here in the tree. The moss and the lichens. There's a beautiful lichen there. And I'll just take you up through the fairy wood. This is another little path that I take sometimes, but mostly it's just left to the wildlife, and occasionally I see little signs where mammals of various sizes have been through here. And here's where part of a branch has come down and has been occupied by the ivy. Well, that's perfect roosting and nest, well, perfect roosting for many birds, especially the pheasant. And then if I just walk you up through here, it's a little path that brings me up to there. So I'm going to just put the camera up so you can see. And these are the seeds now coming on the ivy, the fruit if you like. This is the fruit of the ivy coming up. And because it's so sheltered here, of course, we've got ferns still green. And then in some spots like here, the moss and the lichens is just dripping from the trees. And trails of ivy, and even lichens on the ivy. Look at this. Isn't that amazing? The magical midwinter, huh? Is it little wonder that the ancient peoples of this land were so enraptured and so intrigued and so enthralled by the solstice and the midwinter, and it was kind of revelatory in a way. You get to see so much. You see the bare bones of it all, but yet it's not bare. It doesn't come across as bare. It comes across as sort of full of life. Like, look at this. This is a branch which is dying, and yet it's been occupied by lichens and mosses, and it's just so full of life. And this is one of the trees I planted here in the fairy wood. Oh, about, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago. As I didn't plant all the trees at once, you know, it took me years planting them. This one's a I think it's a poplar, or it could be an aspen. It's very high now. More lichens here. And those big white blobs, they're also lichens. Beginnings of lichens, you can just see here, just where they're beginning. And the paths, of course, they go on and on. And climbing up and up and up out of the fairy wood. There's still some leaves left on the oak. Well, that's about maybe a quarter of the woodland here at Bealtaine Cottage. Maybe not even that. If I was to make a video at the same pace and walk all the paths of Bealtaine Cottage, it would probably be about 2.5 hours long. Perhaps more. It's amazing how 3 acres, which seems such a tiny parcel of land in the scheme of things, and you know, if you were to say to a farmer or an environmental scientist or you know, someone who was interested in acquiring land in which to carry out a business or some kind of a transformative scheme like this, they would say, oh, no, 3 acres isn't any good. No, we'd have to be looking at something bigger than that. If we want to plant a woodland, it's got to be, you know, 10, 15, 20 acres or more. But yet look at what 3 acres has here. And I still have a little bit of room when you look in here, because with little spaces that I left, I was hoping at one point, you know, to build a little tiny home in here or a little kind of a woodland hut where people could come and stay, and you know, just a little hut, little wood burning stove, little bed, just very snug. So in this little area here, which is sort of a good sized garden space really, so I left that empty, but I'm going to put some trees in there. So that's all going to be part of this ongoing winter work. And the reason, of course, why it's important not to be dithering around in my gym jams. Oh, that sounded like a duck or something, didn't it? So I'm just walking straight down rather than along horizontal paths, perpendicular. And just bringing the camera down as far as the pond. Jack's having a little drink there. Look how clear and beautiful that water is. Now there is some person who occasionally leaves a comment on here which says something like, why don't you have carp in your pond? It does actually sound like a guy, I think it is a guy. Why would I have carp in my pond? Why would I go and put anything in my pond? Is it not enough as it is? It has water beetles and mayflies and frogs and toads, tadpoles and spawn and midges, lots of little midges over it during the summer. In fact, I can see some midges on it now. It's here as part of a natural woodland, and I feel very blessed to have this spring water. And it was the goddess who guided me to dig out that little piece of land where a spring well just came up from. Now the water is running beautifully. Why would I want to introduce things to it? That's not my job. That's not something that I feel compelled to do. That's not something that enters into my consciousness. So, coming up to 29. So I'd like to say just blessings to you all. I'll go back up to the cottage and load this video up. Blessings to you all and have a beautiful weekend, everyone.